half of the buildings in Manhattan, the tenants, they have no financial benefit to be more efficient, okay? And the other half, they may pay for their energy, but it's such a small charge in comparison to their bill that it's not a great motivator. So my theory is this. One, we work with the city to get the rules changed, the ordinances changed, and we try and get the landlords to bill the tenants for their energy and not have everything included in the rent. So that it might be minor, but there is some incentive there. And then two, we want to make sure that everyone in the building, in the space, all the users have a way of finding out how much energy their operation is using, okay? And then two, how that ranks to other people doing similar things in the building. Because, let's start at least from the perspective of getting people the information and then having them know if they're good or they're bad in a relevant way. And then finally, providing some clues that they can use to become the best in the building. So our approach is, and now that's our theory, right? And we provide the information in those three areas. Here's how much energy you're using, and we do this through web technologies. How much are you using? Here's how you compare, and this is what you can do. Now, the audience, I look at this in this way. There's three audiences, all right? And we organize the information specifically for the audiences. One are those people who run the spaces, who are in charge of the air conditioning, the heating, lights, the maintenance, the operations of the building. So we provide a certain targeted pieces of information for them that are relevant to their jobs. And then secondly, there are the tenants and the people who use the building who are responsible for paying the bill, all right? And so we provide information to them in terms of financial information, how much they could save if they do certain things certain ways, and we hope that evokes change. And then finally, there's the people who work in the space. And, I find this interesting, but there are folks out there who will respond to a system. It's not their job, okay? They just work amongst 100 other people in a space. But if they have access to the information and we inform them on what simple things they can do to make the space more efficient, we find that the chances are good they'll do it. And, we're talking about spaces. And at the end of the day, what I'm really looking to do is eliminate waste in the space. And that is making sure things are off when no one's around, making sure the building systems are working the way they're intended to work, which is not so easy to find out even with instrumentation. And the human feedback is very important. And so we have these little exercises that they can do. And we've actually discovered an interesting statistic. And that is if an office or space has 40 people or more in it, we know that one of those 40 people will respond to the system. Less than 40, we're not so lucky. So and again, the responses are informing us if the systems are working. We know that if the systems are working, then the space is at a minimum point in terms of its energy use. So that's generally what we do. So communication, a lot of communications, understanding who the audiences are, bringing people into our design process, and then most importantly, when we finish, we don't, the information doesn't stop. The information continues.
Okay. Thank you for your inputs. Now, Mrs. Ross, is the dynamics similar in China or in any other cities that you've been working in?
First of all, thank you very much that we have the opportunity to learn about the Hong Kong market, because a shame Shuko was not presented in the last 10 years. So I feel this is different a little bit from the mainland. And on the mainland we have, of course, other experiences, for example, in Europe, because the structure of the market is different. This is also related to the land right, because we have not so many people who earn land, or no people earn the land. So you have not private investors, you have a lot of big developers. They building huge residential high-rise building. They build 50, 100 villas, and so you have to convince them to use quality system. And we as Schüco, and I have to say that, of course, we are taking the opportunity to talk with people about green building and so. But what we mostly see in the mainland or here is we are selling luxury. We are selling for people who can afford more expensive goods. And now we try also to come into these lower budget houses because we see that it's a lot of quantity. In the moment we are only focused on the top of the pyramid, and quite successfully, because meanwhile we have a market and we can also convince developer for better quality, for sustainability. It's a very complicated word. And also what we heard, maintenance and everything is a topic. And now they realize that there are other options and they can sell it. And this is the most important thing. When they recognize that they can sell the product, then we are successful. And the same is with green building. So we are working on that. We increase our people to give advice. We have doubled our people in the last 2 years. So because we have 15 minutes to show our options. It's not enough. We have to talk personally to all the architects, to the developer, to convince them and to also to ask for their requirement, for their requests. That is our...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Strauss. Liam, you've been putting down a lot of notes. So what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, our view on tenants, the way our business model interacts with tenants is we'll usually do a sustainability service for the company. And then part of that will often involve some green office programs. And whilst that goes into, business air travel, office procurement and things like that, obviously energy is a pretty important part of an office carbon footprint. Interestingly, in Hong Kong, I think what we've found is that most offices are getting lighting and small power data on their bill and paying for it. We haven't found that in other countries. Actually, tenants get better data in Hong Kong than the US, as far as we can tell from our client base, where more tenants in the US seem to just pay for everything as part of a flat fee, and the lighting goes in there too. Of course, nobody's getting the cooling, and that would be nice. So I would agree with Paul that the cost-saving motivator is pretty small, especially when you look at Hong Kong rents. So that, as a driver, is not a significant one. It's really then about the main driver that we see is the corporate's view of itself, the company's view of itself, and how important they think having a low carbon footprint or a sustainable brand is to their employees and to their customers. So the sectors where we've seen this work best in Hong Kong, professional services, marketing, that kind of thing, particularly where we've noticed where competition for staff is high. So where people think there's a scarce labour resource, and they've done an internal poll of their employees and found that working for an environmentally responsible company is a nice to have, then that's certainly been a motivator in the Hong Kong market. I think in terms of what could be done to improve the situation, having a higher profile, stronger recognition system would be good. There's a few certifications or awards that you can get for offices in Hong Kong. WWF's got one. Government have got a couple. I think Hong Kong PC's got one. It'd be good to consolidate all those into something that was, strongly marketed and very valuable. Potentially also could leverage the Beam brand, actually, for something like that, right? And I think the other thing there is also landlord collaboration. Interesting that Paul was talking about building teams. We rarely have the opportunity to do that through our business model because the landlord usually doesn't see enough tenants coming on site to get interested. But certainly the tenants themselves would, because the landlord is such a huge body of expertise on these issues, as well as the things that they can do together, would respond very differently if the landlord were proactive. And I think there's actually scope for landlords to go and market this to tenants as part of the building services or the relationship that they build. And we don't just see, it's not just multinationals, it's Hong Kong companies too that are interested in this.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Can I see some hands from the floor? Do you want to follow up? Do you have any comments? No? Okay. Yes?
I just want to respond to your first film, particularly concerning, I heard much about the design stage, and the operational stage of how to save energy. And I just want to share the one experience from the management perspective. That means we are not just considered from the design stage, but we also have to consider from management of property. The problem is that we are not just consider how to save the energy, but can we provide some energy, generate from renewable energy from managing the building. That means if we can mobilize the consumer, that such as the tenant, owner, homeowner, to participate in the recycling stream, that means they could generate a lot of renewable energy, which will have to reduce the footprint. And this is significant because this would, this would let the general public to understand how to reduce energy and how to generate new type of reusable energy for the community. And they would be more aware of the environmental protection. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there any response from the panel? Yes.
Maybe I have not got right your question, but your question is that the owner of the building produce more renewable energy and export, or I not got right? Because the only question, let's say, generally speaking, since I'm 30 years in the business, and the only answer is if the things are not economic, then nobody will invest in it.
That, for example, in residential, commercial, or industrial building, most of them, for example, food waste, for example, paper, plastic, or any other thing which can be recycled. And this can be a source of renewable energy. And we can mobilize the resident, the occupants or consumer, to participate in the campaign. And this could be a way to generate energy for the community.
But this is, I think, the amount compared to what these buildings or the society consume is a very, very small amount.
I don't think we cannot say that energy saving, the way of saving is so small. Because so we do not do this because energy protection is start from, everybody do something. If we do not do anything at all, that's no use. Particularly, this will mobilize the public not just to recycle their own waste, but that they would understand how to, save the energy, not just because what you say is more restrict to the utilization of public facility, but that is inside the unit, inside those individual unit or private place. And I think this is important because private place is a great area comparable with public area.
Thank you very much. I think we heard what you want to say. Thank you.
So, just one observation from buildings in Manhattan. I think it is good to cultivate an atmosphere of working efficiently and recycling and working in an organized fashion. And most of our buildings now have recycling stations, and we ask and demand that the users of the buildings, separate their plastic from their paper when they put it in the recycling things. That we have them bring in their old electronics and their old batteries, and we have recycling stations for this in the buildings because it's easier to transport larger piles of that from the buildings. But from the perspective of cultivating a culture of, a reduction of waste and of being careful about energy, all right, I think that there's some value there. all right? Because this is all about, using what you should use and not wasting. That's really what this is.
Yes, please, Oliver.
I also want to add something to this. This is a kind of specialty I've learned here, not here, but in mainland China. I see 3 parties involved in what you want to achieve. And one part is surely the government, who should maybe encourage things by incentives. That's always a good way. That's no question about that. Another way is, another party is, for example, the Bean Association, who is providing the data, who is providing the knowledge, or who helps to combine this knowledge, the interest, and bring it to the people. But the third part, and this is, in my opinion, more important, and this is why the DGNB is, I think, faster successful, because the people itself in Germany have a very strong commitment to organize themselves and do it. If you are a building maintainer, you can go and make it an idea. You go out and say, okay, guys, in our apartment or in our house are 100 apartments, or 200, or 400, and from now on we collect electronics, from now on we collect plastics, and we try to find a way to be like a good example and let other people join and follow us. And by this, your reputation is rising. You can take higher rents, or people love to live in your place. Everyone is more happy. You have something to gain from that. Yeah, that is something you have to achieve yourself. You can achieve yourself. This is an opportunity too. So it's very easy. I found this mentality in China that many people say, the government. That's the government. Yeah, we are not sharing, we are not separating the waste. The government is very bad. But the people, they drive a car, they take a plastic bottle, they throw it out the window. Yeah? And I ask them, what is the government going to do about that? Imprison you? Or what? Yeah. You know what I mean? So this initiative is very important. And you can take this opportunity. You have already an advantage. You see the problem. And now you can take the next step, have an idea about it, and do it. So this is also... I have to...
Yeah, thank you, Oliver.
I'd like to respond to Edward regarding to the recycling industry.
Okay.
Some of the experience I'd like to share with you. Just about the collection of the plastic bottle, right? We understand that all plastic bottles should be put in the recycle bin. And then the next time you think about that, there should be someone who will collect it and somehow turn it into something useful. But for them, it's a business as well. It's a recycling business. But whether a business can sustain or not depends on the business model. Now, the key factor is that in the Twin Moon Eco Park, we have a very big factory to collect all the bottles basically for Hong Kong. But they're always almost bankrupt. The reason is because you people didn't really press the bottle small enough. So at the time they collect it, the transportation take up too much space for all the empty bottle. At the end, the fee, they really cost them to transport all the bottle to their factory even much more and higher than they collect it. That means that one bottle that they collected, they have to pay the transportation from the industry. And without the support from the government, the industry will die very quickly. But at the same time, the government somehow say that, you are a business commercial operation. We should not subsidize a commercial operation. So you can see a very difficult dilemma in Hong Kong currently is that everyone want to do something really better. But in order to make the business work, we have to have a business model which can be sustainable as well. So at the end, it's about user behavior. We have to teach the public, whenever you try to throw a empty plastic bottle for recycle, you have to press it down to a very, very small, tiny volume. That volume will cause industry to die if you don't do that. Thank you.
Well, actually, people throwing away aluminum cans, they've been doing that all the time. They try to press it before they throw it away.
But the old lady on the street, they do it all the time.
Yes,
they know the space occupied for
yes.
the transit is a key factor.
So they can collect more and put it in their bags, right?
Exactly.
Yes. I think you've got a point because we have to think holistically, even if we are putting forward some good ideas. And since, Benny, you've got a mic, I want also to talk about, from buildings to community to the neighborhood, because that's another way to think holistically, not just thinking about energy efficiency within the building, but how can we translate that into the neighborhood area? And Professor Fisher, I also would like to have you to talk a little bit about how to couple house and mobility. Is there a real opportunity that we can do it? Maybe not just in Germany, but maybe in Hong Kong, in a city like this. What's your take? But Benny, please go ahead first.
regarding to the transformation from the green building to the eco community, I think there are a few ideas I'd like to share, and also would like to have some comments. The first one is that we have to display your energy certificate. That means that in Hong Kong, actually, Hong Kong somehow, I don't know why, in the UK, they launched a program in 2008. Every single building is mandatory required by the government to display the energy certificate. So basically, I know that the building that I live, the performance compared to the others, by floor area or by number of people. By floor area, it's just very straightforward. So in that case, an apple-to-apple comparison. This is very important. So this is what we call like a monitoring and also try to have a public awareness. When the time you try to move from a single unit to a community, you need to use the community a driving force, which is a monitoring and communication between each other. Like we now have 9 people in here. We try to copy each other somehow. So somehow this is very important in terms of the monitoring. I think the second, in terms of built environment, is about the air ventilation. In Hong Kong, the problem is very severe already. Sure, we're complaining about the climate change. We're complaining about very rapid growth of GDP recently. We got a very severe air pollution problem. You even somehow claim that the pollution problem is coming from the peripheral delta. But actually, if you think about more, it's about the time we try to design our city. We didn't think enough holistically. We began to building mass. Like, shall we prepare a beachway from the middle prevailing wind and all the way penetrate the building at time we try to design, which is about the urban planning. But actually, urban planning, everyone try to saying that it's not my responsibility. I only responsible for this building. But if everyone doing the same, at the end we don't have a good city. So a good city which will have a good ventilation will solve a lot of problems, including health, actually. I think third is about we have to have a government support. At the end, I have to say that government policy support is the key driver on many, many things. We have to have some incentive. Because when you think about the sustainability, we almost about the triple bottom line, which is the environment, the economy, and the social. At the end, in order to make and sustain for those 3 sectors, the economy is still one of the key factors that we have to consider for anything. So government's incentive, government policy, government funding will be the key driver to move the cycle together in order to have a sustainable community. Okay. So, Professor Fisher?
You asked me about buildings and mobility. I think on long-term aspects, there is no chance more for these cars, what's happened now here and also in Hong Kong, these SUVs and Porsche and all these crazy cars. This is no future, of course, could not be. I mean, engineer and architects, we both together, we are responsible for nearly 70-80% of the energy consumption in cities and buildings and mobility. So the industry, as also Mr. Kratzmann said, 30%. So what is the long term? Every huge company in Germany on cars, what are they thinking? They're thinking for short distance electricity, and for long distance hydrogen or gas cars. So this is what we think. I mean, we researchers and by the way, I would like to say something about labeling. Maybe I say something about labeling. It's nice to have it, but creative things coming not from labeling, creative things coming from engineers and architects, and this is what I'm thinking about. That city buildings and cars should come in a comprehensive approach, town planning, sure. and I think this what's happened now in Hong Kong. Maybe we could look maybe 40 years, 30 years ahead. It must totally change, because we're running out of these resources. Finish, yeah. And then maybe electricity from nuclear powers will all be safety things. Maybe we don't know. But we could not learn from these SUV people, the people who are driving these SUVs now. We could learn not from these people. We should learn from people. You have seen my car. It's a small car, the Smart or the Fiat. This is what I need. I need not more. And this is what I'm thinking. Okay. And as soon as possible, the industry are looking in this direction. I think this will be good for our future society.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. And Paul?
It didn't get by me that he looked at the American when he said SUV. I have no car.
Good.
I walk. But the only point I want to make is that with regards to the transportation in the cities, the densifying the cities is a good thing. All right, bringing more people into the cities. I live in a relatively dense city, and when you do that, you do reduce the transportation, the individual private transportation. You do increase the quality of life because, you know, someone locked up in their car for 3 hours a day is not spending that time working with their family. And so literally making the cities bigger, smarter, and more friendly to live in is a good solution.
Okay. Well, I think you guys are really lenient to our panelists, but because we are running out of time, so I will just keep it that way. Now, before we close, well, first of all, please give a